Keith, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I know it's been a labour of love. You've probably been cussing my name for the last few months.
Not at all. But aye, maybe a wee sign of my life now in terms of how busy and I try to plan stuff, and things are getting increasingly harder to do, to be honest with you. So, but no, delighted to finally have the opportunity to come in.
Brilliant. You're probably making history here as well, because I had Jane on at the start of the podcast.
That's right.
First husband-wife with two different careers here.
I know. That can happen often.
Brilliant. So we'll talk about current role at St Mirren and how that's been for you. It's a kind of big transition for what you were doing, kind of managing, assistant managing. But I wanted to ask you about your kind of playing side first. You were at Motherwell for a long time. You're in the Motherwell Hall of Fame. You're over 400 appearances for the club. When you were, I always ask guests this, when you were 14, 15, was it always a dream to be a football player? Or what did you see yourself kind of doing at that age?
It was the dream. I think. I'm sure it's a common answer to most people that you speak to that have been involved in football. That first and foremost, they want the opportunity to play. But I had a bit of a unconventional route, shall we say. Grew up in Erskine, played boys club football. Had two older brothers, so played football in the street. Really, what I mean. Classic, kicking into a shot front, jumpers down for goalposts, etc., etc. And very changed days even back then. In terms of, wasn't really any established academies as such at that point. It really was, you were playing boys club football, you'd get maybe some scouts, a lot of teams if you were lucky, and then it was S forms and things like that you would sign. So no, the kind of full singing and dancing academy systems that we have at the moment. And I didn't get picked up, to be perfectly honest. I wasn't really training with a team or anything like that, all the way up to I actually left school at 15 and went to be, starting my electrical apprenticeship, served my time as a spark. And I didn't start at Motherwell till I was 19, and the only way I got into it was actually my first manager, or turned out to be my first manager at Motherwell, Billy Davies. I actually helped out with my boys club at that time, which was Glenaford Thistle and Paisley. Right. We used to train at Linwood Sports Centre, and Billy was starting to get in his coaching, and as a bit of a favour to Glenaford, he was coming down and taking a night's training, and it was only through that connection that he seen me train with Glenaford a few times, and then he get the job at Motherwell. So really kind of convoluted process, to be honest, that I even became a footballer, to be honest with you. So it was mental when you think back to it, when you think now, been involved in the industry now for 25, 30 years and whatever. But really it was that connection that that was the only thing that ever really gave me a chance in professional football. And, ended up serving my time. My dad was like, so I got the chance to go and sign for Motherwell. My dad was into my third year of my apprenticeship. My dad and myself really was like, look, I'm not throwing that down the pan, before I get the chance. So eventually, managed to pass my trade test, and then, I eventually went on a trial up to Motherwell and managed to, they offered me a contract to go on there when I was, at 19. So no very, very changed days to these days, obviously, when they're picking boys up for, very young now. So that was me, and then, that obviously then, kick-started a whole new career that, to be honest, to your initial question, you wanted to be a footballer, but I've got to admit that I thought that chance had passed me by, to be honest.
I was going to say, at that age as well.
Yeah, I mean, at that age you think, it's not happening for me. You always, I don't know, maybe somewhere in your head you think, you maybe get a wee chance. But by that time, I'd moved on, to be honest with you, in my mind. I was working, had a starting a new life, basically, working. And then, as I say, it was only that relationship really that changed, turned my life around, really. When I think back on it, it is that classic sort of sliding doors moment. 100%. If I don't meet Billy, I'm probably no sitting here, talking to you and everything that's been in between those times. So a bit mad actually when I think back to it, how much that moment actually changed my life, to be honest.
And was that see at the time, obviously, when you'd finished like your apprenticeship and you were ready to go, did you see it as a risk going for the trial and signing, even though it's probably what you wanted your whole days, but you've then kind of grafted to become an electrician and you're in the position of going and doing that? So was it hard to actually decide at that point?
It was, to be honest, and I think you know, it was less money for a start. Because, I mean, being a fourth year apprentice and then going and, you know, I signed a 1 year contract at Motherwell. You know, I can remember it was like, I don't know, 180 quid a week or something like that. Anyway, it was less than I was getting as doing my apprenticeship. So it certainly wasn't for the money, but what it was an opportunity. It was still a risk. And actually, even for my first couple of years at Motherwell, it was just kind of 1 year contracts I was signing, so it was, even for that first couple of years, I would say, it was still a risk, really. You know, I mean, football is a risk in general, to be honest, playing. You know, and you see the stats about how many young players actually make it through the systems now, etc. And it was similar back then. You know, there's only so many spaces, and it's, even if you get in for a year, it's not to say you'll get another contract, and then, as you say, you're walking away for maybe a steady job and a steady, you know, income, and you know, so it was a risk, but ultimately what won in the end was just the opportunity. As I say, one that I thought had passed me by, so I just couldn't not at least try it, and that's that was the end up. That was the decision.
Did you get to a point where, even if you're sitting in your 1 year contracts and you're having to prove yourself, you would have to prove yourself every season anyway at that level of football, but did you get to a point where you felt, this is it for me now, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 10, 15 years?
I did, but it did take time. I did definitely a bit of imposter syndrome when I first went into Motherwell, because I did feel as if I was just still a boy off the street, really, that wasn't really belong there.
Waiting somebody getting you and going,
what you did back to that building site, it was like, you know, it's been a good laugh, but away you go, you know. But it really was like that for the first couple of years, and I would say it was a lot going on at Motherwell at that time, if you think back as well. I mean, the club ended up actually getting into administration and, you know, kind of early 2000s, and actually one of the positive things that come off the back of that is a lot of kind of younger players at the time got more opportunity, actually. It wasn't a great time at the club, but what happened, you know, I think some of the lads that came through, myself, Stevie Hamill, Stephen Pearson, James McFadden, David Clarkson, so you know, all that kind of group, if you like, probably certainly get accelerated through just because of the circumstances at the club. And I think it was only really at that point when I started to kind of establish myself, and I was just playing, you know, I actually get into the team, whereas when I first went, I mean, we'd like squad of 25 seasoned pros, then a reserve team, then I was kind of involved in that next group, kind of in about it, and well, you were a Motherwell player, but I wasn't really playing much, to be honest. I was there, I had a contract, but I wasn't. So it wasn't really a couple of years down the line till I actually started getting into the team, and at that point, that's when you feel, in inverted commas, you're a footballer, if you like, you know, you feel as if you belong there a bit more. So it did take a bit of time.
Who did you look up to when you first went in? Was there anybody that was a real kind of inspiration, or somebody you're like, I'm in the same place as this guy now?
There was a couple, to be honest. Andy Goram was one. Right. Andy Goram was there. John Spencer was there. You know, Motherwell signed him from Everton, which is mental now. Motherwell signing a player for Everton at the moment. They were just like, so he was playing the Premier League at that point. Motherwell signed him. There was quite a few, but maybe Andy Goram's probably one that sticks out. And Andy was absolutely brilliant with the young boys, but again, for me, coming for, you know, walking off a building site one week and maybe even watching Andy and his pomp at, you know, previous clubs at, you know, with Scotland, with Rangers, whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm, you know, sitting in a dressing room with this guy, and I'm like, this is a bit weird. What am I doing here? And training with him and whatever. So I'd use him probably as one example. But I mean, there was others. But again, it probably that it was inspirational in a sense. And Andy was, you know, maybe past his best, in a sense, his absolute best, but he was still training. And you know, for me, see that I was seeing a guy, I was like, oof. One thing it did for me it was open my eyes, like, you know, I've got a bit to go here. I've got a standard to get to here that I might have been doing all right with my boys' club and getting the opportunity in here, but if I want to actually be a professional football player, and
is there a big jump? Like, see, when you get to that point, does the standard go up?
I think it does. Certainly for where I was in all aspects, like fitness and how you look after yourself, and you know, I thought I looked after myself well until I got into that environment, and then you're a bit like, right, okay, there's another level to go with that sort of thing, and even God, that's whatever 30 years ago, whatever 25 years ago. the games. I think he's moved on since then in terms of that side of the game. But just all over, standard of training, standard of, everything was just, I had to totally raise my game. And that's why, as I said, that first wee period for me, I was probably definitely a bit of imposter syndrome in there. I'm not sure I deserved to be there. But again, just over time, and as I said, the season pros there were brilliant with the young boys. I mean, generally, you usually find that. See the pros, they were good, generally good with the young boys. Listen, there was a standard, and you were put in your place if you had to be. Just that's the environment that it was. It was a tough environment at times, but when it came to the crunch, they had your back. They had your back in games, they had your back off the field. But to get their trust, if you like, you had to prove yourself that you were. You were part of the team, and you were trying to be the best you could be, basically. So that's basically what I tried to do in that first period. And as I say, probably took a while, but I eventually got there.
And it's the thing is with the tough environment as well, it probably makes you or breaks you, because they're preparing you for what life's going to be like if you're playing week in, week out. And that's something I'm always curious about. Obviously, even when you play football at kind of amateur level, you're playing about with your pals, there's always an element of pressure there. No matter where you're playing, you want to win and you want to do well. But see, when you're in the environment of Motherwell and there's fan expectations, there's manager expectations, there's pressure to win games, how do you cope with that side of things? Because you're trying to worry just about your own game, but you've got all that in the background as well.
As a good point, and I think again, it's something I think. It's something I think you learn to deal with as the longer you're involved in it, but it's also something that grows the more you're involved in it, because I felt as if it grew with me the more responsibility I took on. So the longer I've been at a club, the more appearances I'd made, the more connections you make at the club, ended up becoming the captain and becoming, coach and whatever at the end. But even in my playing career, you then become one of the leaders, so you almost take on even more responsibility and more pressure, if you like. But I think you learn to deal with that as you go. And I think, to be honest, in terms of player development, it's something that even now, even in Marrow, and thinking how we can improve our academy and football structure as a whole, it's one of the things that's always in the forefront of my mind, is how can we best prepare young players coming into what is definitely a more pressurised environment in the first team, because it's just more consequences. The games matter more, and the demands are higher. So that transition now from academy football into the first team is just how you kind of join that up is critical. So it was back then, and it is now, and it's just trying to have the environment where players can come in and learn how to deal with it, and because there's no doubt. And I think the other thing that's makes it a bigger issue now than it probably was then is social media as well. I mean, the media now, back then, you'd play a game on a Saturday and you pick the paper up on a Monday morning and read how you got on, or get your rating, get your whatever, a 5 out of 10 or whatever I used to get. But anyway, but no, it's instant. The game finishes and all the boys are on socials, and it's like fans, media, everything's constant now. So actually, more than ever now, players need to be able to handle that, whether they just choose to avoid it or whether because a lot of the boys are active on social media, and which can be a force for good as well. Like it's not all negative, but if you want to be on it, you're going to have to deal with that pressure and expectations. So it's not an easy thing. I think different people handle it differently. Definitely for me, it just took me time, but I felt as if at the end I was, you just have more experience to deal with certain situations, different pressures. And that's what I was going to say. By that point, and when you're like your captain of the team, do you then start to enjoy it a wee bit? That you've got that expectation on your shoulders, and you've went full circle, and you've probably got then young guys in the team who are looking the position you were in when you first came into the team. But when you're going to like your Celtic Parks, your Ibroxes, your Hampdens, do you then think I'm here, I'm good enough to be here? I'm enjoying it, I'm just going to enjoy myself? I think you almost end up having a duty to be, because at the end of the day, people, you're absolutely right, all of a sudden you're that, looking at those young players coming in the dressing room, you think back, right, it's my duty to help him incorporate into the team, and how, players even coming up from England, I always felt it was partly my responsibility then to help them settle in and their families, etc. But I actually ended up enjoying that, and it coincided probably, I think personally, with the best years of my career. I mean, my better years were my latter years of my career, you know, in terms of performance and how we done as a team. But, you know, I mean, I was late 20s, early 30s. I think I probably played my best football. And I think that was part of it, because I actually enjoyed responsibility. I enjoyed, you know, being a senior player and then being the captain. I actually enjoyed that, you know, that extra role, if you like. I mean, it's not for everybody. I think some people just want to come in, do their job, do their training, get up the road, which is fine. And it's, you know, it's everybody's get their, you know, strengths, weaknesses and things that, you know, they like and they don't like. Personally, I felt as if it helped me in a personal level. And as I say, being captain of the club is something I, you know, absolutely loved and thrived off, to be honest.
And you obviously, you two spells at Motherwell. You were down south at Plymouth as well. When you were at Motherwell, like first time around, did you have any plans on where you would want to go, or were you happy just sitting where you were, or did you have a kind of career plot of ideally I would like to try down south, or what were you kind of thinking?
Again, something a probably common theme for me. I was quite. I didn't think I would ever get the chance to play in England. Even when I went to Motherwell at first, I was quite again, go back to that imposter syndrome. I don't know whether it was just because the way I get into football. I was always felt as if you know, there was always a small part of me. It was a bit like I was just doing well to be where I was. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's putting myself down, but it's not me trying to you know, look for sympathy or anything like that. It was just basically, that's where my mindset was. I was just like, to be playing Premier League football in Scotland was like, I was like, oh, I'm doing well here. So, I mean, the answer to the question is no, I didn't really have any plans or career plan. I'm going to go and do this, that, and the other thing. I was just concentrating. I just want to get in the Motherwell team, and if I can do that and hang about here, nobody finds me out and sends me back to the building site, I've cracked it. And honestly, that was my mindset at that time. So when the opportunity came, and I had no real plans to leave Motherwell, to be honest with you, but almost that was actually part of my decision making to leave. That when a club came, and Plymouth had just been promoted into the Championship, it was actually the first year of the English Championship, the rebrand of the English Championship. I didn't expect it, and it was almost something that took me by surprise a little bit. And then when I got the opportunity, I was almost a bit like, I don't think I'm going to get this opportunity again. And that's actually part of my decision making to go. It wasn't that I was unhappy at Motherwell, far from it actually, but it was almost something telling me that, you know, if I don't take this opportunity, then you know, it's going to make, there's a very good chance it could pass me by. Now, whether that would have been the case or no, I don't know. But it was just. You know, when am I again going to get the chance to go and play in England, and particularly at that level, with Championship level, which is a really good level of football. So ultimately, that then kind of led to my decision to move down south.
How did you find the standard down there compared to? Obviously, it's different now, but even back then, I think even when you watch the English Championship, looks a horrible league to try and get out of. Whether you're at the bottom of it, you're in the middle, or you've come down with the Premier League, you just look at it and go, teams aren't coming out of that right away. But was there much of a difference standard-wise from Scotland?
I think, as I've always found that a hard question to answer, really, and because, you know, if I can just take it at that point in time, because the games do fluctuate on both sides of the border, and they have done since then, you know, in terms of how strong the Scottish game was then against how it is now. So these things do change. But what I would say is physically, I found it a big surprise, a big jump physically. I thought, I mean, I went down and, you know, I'm not the biggest anyway in terms of my own stature, but I was like taken aback by the athleticism of the game in England and English Championship. It just did seem as if everybody was 6'2" and you know, built you know, in terms of sports science, and almost as if I went down there and it was like they were 2 or 3 years ahead of us in Scotland. It really did feel that way, and so that took a bit of getting used to be honest with you. In terms of the actual standard, I mean, at the time in the Championship, I wouldn't say across the board it was of a higher standard. You know, not every team, but you know, we had, you know, Leeds United, West Ham United, Sunderland at the time, you know, some really big clubs in that Championship at the time as well, with some top players. I mean, one of my first games we played against West Ham away. And actually, I played against Teddy Sheringham. Teddy Sheringham was playing as like kind of number 10 for them, and I was playing in midfield, a kind of deep line midfield, if you like. And he was just different class. He was like, you know, they beat us 5-0 or something like that, the old Upton Park. And I remember coming away from that game thinking, oh, you know, this is a decent standard here, you know, and I'm a bit like, again, the old wee chirp in the head, should you be here playing here and blah blah blah, you know. So that was kind of common theme for me, even still at that point when I was playing that. But so individually, some of the players and clubs, you know, no hugely different across the board, but as I say, the one big thing I did notice was just the physicality across the board, which was just, you know, just night and day compared to Scotland across the board.
And is it something you would, obviously you'll see a lot of young players just now in your day-to-day, is it something you would recommend, be it alone or just for an experience, to go down to England and try it if you get that chance at some point in your career?
I would... Aye, very much so. I mean, I'd have loved the opportunity personally, but like my own situation, like to play abroad or one of that. I know there's a few young Scottish lads doing it now. You know, Aaron Hickey, Josh Doig, Lewis Ferguson. I think that's a fantastic thing. See, getting away and that life experience, even another language and like that. But even going to England as well, 100%. You know, it was, and you know, that thing of feeling as if I should have been involved in it actually took for me to go to England and then come back to Scotland, and that's when I think I lost that, you know, the fact that I'd been to England, played, and I came back and actually come back a better player, rounded player. It never quite worked out for me, England, you know. I played a lot of games at the start in the first season, and then as happens, change of manager, etc, etc. It never quite worked out for me, albeit it was a good couple of years, but it actually helped my experience actually then push me on in my second spell at Motherwell, which was, you know, as I said to you before, that's when I went on to play probably my best football and involved in some great seasons at Motherwell. But I think that experience in England was a huge part of actually kicking me on in that second half of my career.
See, from the manager point of view as well, and you touched on it there, I'm always curious with, it's probably one of the jobs in the world that a manager can change every few months or a season, and the players are supposed to just pick up and keep going, and you're having to impress somebody. Oh, here again, you're starting from scratch. How does that work? See, from a kind of psychological point of view, if you're in there and, like as you've said, you've got that wee imposter kind of voice going, I don't know if I should be here. The guy that wants you there is away, somebody else comes in, are you sitting there going, I need to do all this again? It's just a merry-go-round.
But pretty much. I mean, I think, I don't know, Motherwell must be up to maybe a dozen-ish managers, I think I had in my time across the board in Motherwell. And then down south, obviously a couple of managers down there as well. But that's the thing about professional football and probably professional sport, is resilience is a huge part of it, a huge part of being a professional sports person. And from my experience in football, it's a huge, really, really huge part of it, because it just, your journey or whatever you want to call it, is just never going to be, listen, some players are right, very few, but you know, some players, it doesn't matter who the manager is, you're going to play just because you're that good and whatever, right? But they're few and far between, particularly in Scotland. So it's building up that resilience, I think, and a level of probably understanding that it does happen. You know, I think maybe the first time it happens to you, you think, you maybe kind of get into your head, you think, well, why am I not playing? I should be playing. But actually, after it happens, the older you get, the more experience you get, you realise it is sometimes just a part of the game, it's a part of football, and you need to deal with it. And bouncing back from adversity and in a personal level like that, and falling out the team, it's huge. I mean, I had moments of that in Motherwell as well, you know. But first, you know, what the main one that comes to mind was when Jim Gannon took over at Motherwell, and myself and a few of the other experienced players. I mean, literally overnight went from playing every week to, you know, surplus to requirements, sometimes not even in the squad, which again, for somebody that had been there, already been there a long time, it's hard to take, but you just need to go on with it. You know, it's just a case of that. You need to go on with it, and you need to, you know, show an attitude that you don't agree with it, and you might fall out with a manager or whatever, but you need to stay professional and kind of keep an understanding. It is part of the game.
And I suppose it goes back to what you said as well about when you were down in England and you can back up and you feel a better player for it. I suppose the moments help as well, because when you get back in, you're more like, well, I'm not going anywhere. This time, this is me in the team, and it's probably that the adversity thing's probably massive, because a lot of kids look at football and think, I just need to get in the team and that's it, and they don't think about the other What if you get dropped? What if somebody comes in that doesn't like you? Or what if you need to go on loan? And that's a bit that doesn't really get mentioned that much.
I think it is. It's a dead simple thing to say that kids nowadays, don't have the resilience maybe that you used to have, or they don't get exposed. I do think, and I've got 2 children myself, I do, and I'm guilty of it myself as a parent. I think kids now do get probably more than they used to, or there's it's just as simple as that.
They've got access to so much stuff,
and they've got access to more than they used to, and that's just a fact, so it's almost not trying to manufacture resilience, but trying to build their knowledge up of it. And it does happen, and a bit more that maybe in the past naturally it did happen, you did deal with it more as a young person, and whereas now we maybe need to educate them more about it, rather than it actually happening to them more. So I think there's something to be said for that across the board in society, and I think in sport it's the case as well, for kids particularly coming through academies. So again, it's something that you need to keep, as a club now doing the role I'm doing again, as I said, going back to the academy, that transition into first team, it's something that we need to be aware of and try and make sure that we're keeping an eye on, because to be a footballer, particularly at Motherwell, Motherwell, St Mirren, you're not going to win every week. It's just a fact, right? You need to learn how to deal with that, and you're not going to, you're going to have ups, downs, and in betweens. And as both individually and as a teammate and as a team, you need to learn to deal with that because it's part of the game.
Yeah. From a manager perspective, who did you enjoy working with?
I think my best, in terms of enjoyment, I think again that sort of latter period. I think becoming, captain of the club was a really big thing for me, and that coincided with Stuart McCall was my manager at Motherwell at that time. Stuart was the one that made me captain, and as I said, I loved that. I loved that extra responsibility. I loved the fact of being Motherwell captain and everything that came with that in terms of responsibility, and it was an honour for me.
Did wee voice go at that point?
Aye, well, to be honest, it did, and it probably took up, maybe not quite to that point. Trying to think what age I would have been there, late 20s anyway, maybe even 30 actually. I can't think, but it probably did take all the way to that age. So you think I started at 19. And that's probably a 10-year period, I would say, until I fully felt right. That's me. I belong here. I'm a big part of this. I'm a part of this club, and that's just the truth. So, and I think maybe that is what helped me then coincide with playing my best football. Or what I think. Other people may have an opinion, but certainly from my own opinion, in terms of feeling content and feeling. The role that I played was a significant one on the pitch and off the pitch, etc. So I felt as if it probably did take that long for me really to cement my own kind of mind into the club and my own play. So I would say Stuart probably in terms of enjoyable, in terms of the team spirit that we had, and we qualified for Champions League qualifiers, qualified for Europa League. I think we qualified for Europe. I think it was something ridiculous, like 6 years out of 7 or something like that. But so for a club like Motherwell, just is punching way above our weight. And there was a couple of cup finals in there, semi-finals, etc. That we couldn't quite get the job done in terms of winning a cup. And that's probably one wee kind of regret, if there is, describe it as much as that. But a great time, and probably definitely our most enjoyable time was probably under Stuart.
Sure. What about what was the real high points for you from a playing point of view? I
think Europe definitely. Yeah. I still go back to my debut, to be honest. Again, that wee voice in my head thinking it was at Ibrox against Rangers. Right. We got beat 2-0, so the result never went my way, certainly. But again, walking out at Ibrox, where we had a Motherwell team, and that experience again, just if you'd asked me that question, that 6 months earlier or a year earlier, when I'm walking down to the street to get my papers and about to walk on the building site, whatever, by the way, you're going to be playing at Ibrox next year, and you'll be making your debut for Motherwell. I just went, very good, so. That's, I'm not a big one for really keeping shirts or anything like that, but I've got one shirt out two shirts I've got that, and I've got my testimonial shirt. Right. But the one kind of shirt from my playing time is my debut shirt, and that's still something that I look at sometimes. It just means so much to me.
How was the nerves?
Well, again, showing age a wee bit, but there wasn't certainly mobiles were in their infancy, shall we say. There wasn't, so it was a phone call to my mum and dad's house, and wee Billy Davis phoned my mum and dad's house, and it was my dad picked up, and I knew he spoke. It was just my dad spoke to him and just said, "Can you tell Keith he's playing tomorrow?" And that was a Friday night, and I was sitting, I was like, what? And I think we did a couple of injuries. I think that's how it came about, because I was kind of on the fringes of it, but I wasn't as if I was kind of next in line to come in, if you like. So I didn't really know it was coming. And I was at the Friday night before. I just, look, can you let Keith know he's going to be playing tomorrow?
Who were you playing against?
I didn't get much sleep that night. So and again, that was I think that Rangers team was, I played in the midfield that day was Barry Ferguson, Van Bronckhorst, Jorg Alberts.
Jeez.
Who else was in there? Claudio Reyna. Two guy, I think, came on as a sub. So that was my area of the pitch, and that was just in midfield. So you think about that, I mean, running about there, it was like, I mean, I come off after 90 minutes, and I just remember being absolutely drained, you know, physically, but actually mentally as well, because I was, again, it was just a big jump in standard, you know. It was just like, for me, it was just like, wow, this is like a different level of football here, particularly against those players, you know.
See, in those games, did you, and it's hard if you're losing a game or you're obviously that focused in a game, but do you pick up wee things with players that you're playing against in the middle of the pitch? Like if you're like, get a Barry Ferguson or a Van Bronckhorst, or I can't remember who was at Celtic at the time, but do you pick up wee things when you come off the pitch and go...
Aye, you do. I mean, I picked up loads that day, but it just, you know, everything was just a level above. You know, the way they received the ball, the speed that they passed the ball, even their physicality, and it was just, everything was a learning curve for me at that point, you know. It just seemed everything was just a wee step up, you know, everything that they did. But in particular, you know, and again, I would then went on to play against A players more, and again, you have a little bit more belief maybe the next time you go and play. But you do, you know, both on a technical level and tactically and everything. You're learning all the time. You maybe don't realise it at the time you're learning as much as you are. But you're definitely picking up, you know, wee things for particularly players of that standard.
Same in Europe as well, I'd imagine, with the qualifiers and things.
And that was, I mean, with some great play. I mean, we played in the Olympic Stadium in Athens against Panathinaikos, played against Levante in Spain, played the, you know, non-safe League 1 team in France, you know, done Scandinavian countries, you know, so we played teams for all over Europe, really. And again, European games I found, again, a real learning curve in terms of the style of football. You know, again, the technical aspect of it. And another big thing for me was actually the way they get fouls and things like, you know, for me, being a midfield player that, you know, like to put in the odd challenge now and again, that was kind of, you know, part of my game. It was like how they used their bodies to buy fouls and get, you know, and it was frustrating. Like, first few games, I remember being so frustrated because you couldn't get near it. You just couldn't. And it was like you couldn't get to it. You'd always use their body. I always found foreign players, on the whole, the way they used their body as a barrier between them and the ball, you know, and it was like something you weren't really used to. So you could see the ball, but they would be quite comfortable under pressure. Whereas in Scotland, there was, you know, went close to a player and they'd move the ball on quick. Whereas, you know, some of the guys you'd then go and play against in Europe, they'd know you were there and try to press them and tackle them, but they were quite calm with that. And I was like, this is weird. And then anytime it was a bit much for them, they'd just fall over and win a foul. And you're like, and it was so frustrating at first. But again, just the more you play, I mean, I think we played, I think I was maybe just under 30 games in Europe, which again, I got a club at Motherwell, it's incredible, really, you know, in terms of amount of ties that we had. But again, through that process, you learn a little bit more, playing against the different styles. So it's a great learning curve, but some brilliant experiences. Absolutely brilliant.
Who's the best you played against?
Some of the European players, I mean, some I couldn't even name. I mean, some of them you didn't really know of them too well before you played them, and you came away from some game and you think, "Oof, what a player he was!" You know, you know, some of the Scandinavian countries, like Swedish teams or Norwegian teams, etc. Over the years. I think domestically, there's probably two teams that stand out domestically. I'd say is probably that Rangers team, kind of Dick Advocaat Rangers team at that time, or you know. those midfielders I mentioned, and Michael Moles, Ronald De Boer, these guys, again, just international players, Arthur Newman, that kind of team, I would say, and round about that era, the Rangers team was tough to play against, some real good individuals. And then probably the Celtic team in a different way, of Martin O'Neill's, of Larson and Sutton and Lennon, that team, and they were just power, like I remember playing against, I always found Stilian Petrov a really tough player to play against, because he just run a bit physical, and he really box to box midfielder, and so I found him really tough. But probably overall, I think Barry Ferguson was probably one that I always felt had the most, as a player, most complete midfield player that I played against. That he could do a bit of everything. He could pass. He was strong enough. He had a great passing range, and so he was probably the one player that I felt, in terms of players, particularly Scottish players anyway, that had the most in the locker, if you like. He did, but in his prime, I always felt he was a top player.
What about in your team? Who was it?
Again, lucky enough to play with some great players. I say that kind of batch of young players that I come through with, I think was a bit of a kind of band of brothers that, and they still keep in touch now, and some cracking players. Stevie Hamill was a fantastic player, really most consistent player.
Yeah, I was going to slot 7 out of 10 every week.
Honestly, and again, I don't know, maybe for players that were ahead of him, but somebody I felt, could easily have had 20-30 Scotland caps, you know what I mean? And if, given the opportunity. James McFadden, obviously, just a bit of a mercurial talent. He was younger, and again, somebody that you saw in training, you thought, you knew straight away, right, he's got something a bit different, just something, I say definitely just in terms of raw talent, I would say Faddy's probably definitely right up there. And probably going back to the start, as I say, go back to likes of guys like Andy Goram and guys like that, to me, Andy Goram was world class, and as I say, we probably just saw the tail end of him at Motherwell, to be honest with you. But again, even just seeing him operate on a daily basis was just like, wow, this is, again, at that time for me as a young boy, I was like, this is a different level of fitness, and so I lucky enough to play with some great players as well.
I used to watch him at Ibrox every couple of weeks, and at that age I was like, how's he so wee that he manages to reach these shots in these point blank, just kind of random moments of nowhere.
Some days at training, and it's always that, but you think a bit of an urban myth. But honestly, I almost remember thinking away for training, thinking how you can't score into him. It's just like, I wasn't the best goal scorer in the world, but just watching other people straight and I always remember about Andy as well, was his hands, and he wasn't, obviously wasn't top strike, but he was just solid. You know what I mean? So like when he palmed the ball, so say he palmed the ball, right, it would like go for 20 yards. You're not just falling at striker's feet. It was like fucking bang, it was away, and it's just you see him. Obviously Andy had some issues off the pitch at times and things like that, but it was an absolute privilege to see him train every day as a young boy like that. It was, as I say, it's just somebody you knew you were in the presence of somebody that was, like just at a different level, operating. To see him train when he was at his absolute pomp, if you like, would have been something else to be fair. He must have been unbelievable.
From your point of view, obviously when you're back at Motherwell for your second spell, you're getting older, as all footballers do, and you're getting to obviously a point. Were you thinking about coaching, or did you think you would still be in football, or what was your kind of thought at that point?
Well, my thought was I was determined to try and stay in football, and I think that probably goes back to my leaving school at 15 to go and do my apprenticeship. And by the way, nothing against being a spark, but great trade, and I met some great people doing that, and my older brother's a spark, etc. But there's no doubt it's a privilege to be involved in professional football. So I was pretty determined, to be honest with you, that I wanted to try and stay in the game if I could. And with that, I started my coaching badges pretty early. I think it was 26 when I started, and a bit of an ambition of mine was to, I want to make sure I've got all my badges, so that there's no excuse when I come to the end of my career that I've got everything I need to. And it was coaching that I had an eye on, to be honest, coaching and management, to be honest. The more I get into my coaching badges, the more I was like, I actually was manager, and no secret that Motherwell, hopefully coaching and management was going to be my first choice. So I managed to do that, and I think I completed. So I started my B licence in 26, and then I think by the time I was 34, I had done everything, got right through to my UEFA Pro licence.
How did you find the badges? Because there's probably the same with Scotland and England just now. There's kind of a lot of kind of split opinion on the coaching badges and how they work and the cost element, and if you're a player, do you need all these badges? But you've obviously went through them all. How did you find it from your point of view?
I think you do need them, I've got to say. I think it's not enough just to be a player. I think knowledge is one thing, but I think from my experience now, finishing playing and then getting into coaching for 5 years, coaching is a skill. There's no doubt about it. There's the kind of knowledge is here, and then there's actually being able to deliver that knowledge, because essentially that's what coaching is. It's taking what's in your head and putting it into your player's head, but doing that in an effective manner, and being able to do, and that's where the coaching comes in. So I think there is a skill set to doing that, a particular skill set, and I think that the badges have got to reflect that journey, if you like. I think can the badges licenses be improved? I think the answer to that is yes. I think they can always be improved, and but do I think you need some sort of licensing system? I do. I really do. I think there has to be, because I say having the knowledge and having played the game for 20 years for me is just not enough. And you see that, I think it does help, and there's always this argument of when you think of maybe Jose Mourinho and Arsene Wenger, who've maybe not played the game, but then they come in and I can see why that happens, because there is loads of aspects to being a good football manager. There's no doubt playing the game and having an understanding that helps, but it is really critical in how you deliver that information, how your training sessions flow, how you manage people, is a huge thing, part of it as well. So I think, as I said, the licences are vital, but that's not to say that they can't be improved. Yeah.
So from a coaching point of view then, are you expecting to become an assistant manager that quick?
No, not really, probably again. No, really. I'd been doing a wee bit of coaching in the academy up to that point. And I actually had a year's playing left, so this is like bizarre. You take it up to the day, working with Stephen Robinson. This is bizarre, but pretty much Stephen Robinson retired me as a football player because actually that year's I had triggered another year's contract because I'd played a set amount of games in that year. And Stephen had actually, so he was firstly assistant to Mark McGee, then Mark had left and Stephen had actually come back as a manager.
Right.
But at that point, Stephen originally assisted by James McFadden, but then James was moving on and Stephen had a vacancy, if you like, for assistant manager. But at that time, I'm still thinking, I'm going to be playing next year. I've triggered my contract. But then Stephen came to me and says, look, I know you've been doing a bit of coaching. I've seen you doing bits and pieces, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to come and be an assistant manager? And I don't know how much of that was partly because, by the way, I don't want him as a player. It might have been fueled as much by that as, by the way, do you want to come and be my assistant manager? So maybe a bit of both, to be honest, if you sat him down and asked him, honestly. But again, it was that opportunity thing for me, and it probably goes back to that opportunity to play in England, opportunity to play football in the first place, opportunity to play in England. And it was one of the moments again for me in my kind of life almost, because playing doesn't last forever. You've got to make that change at some point. And ultimately, a lot to weigh up, obviously, because stopping playing is still a big decision. And plus, it would probably be a little drop in my money, and etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the underlying kind of sway in my decision was the opportunity. When am I going to get the opportunity to be assistant manager at a club that you know, that I've got so much affection for, you know, in the Premier League, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, that's how the decision panned out. And by that time, I had built up quite a passion for coaching as well. You know, I was like, I knew that was right. That's what I want my future to be. And so for all those reasons, it ended up I took that decision to move on to become the assistant manager. And
was it hard from being in that dressing room as a player to then being the assistant manager? Was it a hard kind of switch?
It was initially, I think, because it was like, I remember getting away for the summer, so that all that kind of happened kind of just the kind of tail end of the season, obviously, and then kind of over those first couple of weeks in the summer, it was all kind of getting sorted out what I was going to do, whether I was going to keep playing. I ended up taking the opportunity. So actually, I remember getting away that summer. I can't remember, away on holiday, whatever, with the family, and I remember like consciously thinking, right, I've got to go back and distance myself for the dressing room purposely. And I still had Stevie Hamill was still in there as a player. There's still some guys in there that were, I would class as probably my best pals.
You've grew up with like
some of my best pals, never mind teammates, you know what I mean? But I just felt that was really important for me from day one when I arrived back at the club, was like, and no that to the point where you're not speaking to them, but it was like I wasn't getting in and sitting with them for half an hour and what were you up to? You know, it was like I had to make that break. And while the assistant manager can still be that kind of buffer between the dressing room and, you know, it's part of the role really as well, but I did make a conscious decision, right, I want to take a wee step back, and I think that worked. I think that worked for both parties, you know, because I think for the players, you know, I don't think either party, you know, they didn't want it to be weird or, you know, have an effect on their relationship or whatever. So I think it worked, and as I said, I was just full steam ahead, and the way I am, I'm like, once I commit to something, I'm like, right, I'm in it, you know, and I'm full steam ahead. So to be honest, I was so into my coaching and didn't make sure my sessions were right and everything, you know, the cones were doing in the right position. And it's just that sort of initial, you know, I wanted to show the boys as well that I was competent. You know, I was just getting a job because, I'm Keith Lasley, I've been at the club for 15 years. I wanted to show the boys that I was serious about this new job.
Well, they'd probably call you on it as well if it wasn't up to scratch.
Exactly. And I was so determined to show the lads as well that I could do the job and I was good at the job. And as I said, that was my big focus getting into that first couple of months.
And obviously, given where you're both are now, how was your relationship then with Steven from a working perspective and that whole assistant manager relationship?
I would say it's built over the years. You know, first, I mean, I was a player actually when Steven was assistant to Mark as well, and again with kind of a player-coach relationship. Then obviously went on to his assistant, and that relationship where you have a slightly closer relationship then, because you're obviously you know, speaking a lot more about the team and the tactics and etc., and you're building a closer relationship. And I think that grew over time. To be honest, I wouldn't say it's because we didn't know each other before that relationship, so it's not as if you're you know, it's not as if you're pals essentially. You need to build a relationship, and I think what we did at that point is we did build it slowly over time, that you build a trust for each other, and you build, you know, a working relationship, and I think even to now, which is obviously flipped round on its head, and I'm now kind of he's making my tea instead of me making his tea in the morning, but I think there's just what's maintained is a level of respect there, that we know we trust each other in the sense that we're both trying to do the best job we can. We'll no be kind of bullshit between us sort of thing. It's like we'll be, you know, I think we've got enough respect for each other, whatever the situation, because, you know, football is, as we spoke before, you don't win every week, and everything's no rosy, so it's, not every conversation is a happy-go-lucky one. You know, there's some conversations that, you know, is maybe you know, a bit tougher than others, but what has been to this point is just that underlying level of respect for each other is going to be there while we work together. So I think that's a really good thing.
And could you see the qualities there from his perspective at that stage as a manager, and how he kind of worked with the team, and obviously to what he's doing now with St Mirren? But could you see the signs that he was really good at his job at that point?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think when we were at Motherwell, you look for key traits in a manager. You know, can he, what's he like as a coach? You know, how can he organise the team and get the best out of players? How can he manage a dressing room, manage characters, and again, make a team of people better than the sum of their parts? You know, how can he play a trade? How can he, bring maybe some hidden gems up for England and turn them round and sell them on at the right time? And how can we bring her through our own players? Has he got a track record for that? Except, which we managed to do at Motherwell. So you start going down that checklist, and to me, Stephen Robinson's displayed all of those characteristics, both in the job at Motherwell and now, at St Mirren. So he's for us. He's been absolutely fantastic appointment for us at St Mirren. The answer is I could see that from the inside of Motherwell, and I think that is a real help to me now. Knowing how he works, knowing how he operates. Knowing what makes him tick, knowing when I need to leave him for 5 minutes to calm down, and when I can whether maybe suggest this, that or the other. But I think that previous relationship is certainly more of a help than I think is in our current relationship.
And going on the kind of bizarre turns of events that have took you into each area in football, you then become the interim manager for a period as well. Yeah. Where's your head at that point?
That's all over the place, to be honest with you. It's a funny one really, because again, even while I was assistant manager, and listen, I used to speak to Stephen about this. It's not a secret or whatever, but he knew that my ambition at that point was to be manager or a manager. So there was no secret in that. We used to talk about it and things like that, and etc. So. So it was funny really, and actually, did an interview for the job and didn't get it, and I think there's different reasons for that, to be honest with you, but it was an ambition of mine, but it never happened. And again, we'll go back to that, we were speaking about the circumstances in football. Sometimes things don't happen. You hit a bit of a barrier or whatever, but you just go on with it. You need to go on with it. There's no other choice. And I did, and then Graham Alexander comes in, and and I then become assistant to Graham as well, and just go on with you go on with life really, and go on with your job. But it's a surreal kind of time, but a hard time at times to manage. But as I said, it's I think helped me even just now, through that whole experience of going through that, because it's as I say, it was a tough time initially before Stephen left in terms of the run of results, etc. But you just take learnings from it as much as you can, and that's hopefully what I've tried to do. So it was a difficult time, but one that's as I say, stood me in good stead, I think, moving forward.
Was there any big kind of learnings you took specifically, maybe not just for that time, but through your kind of playing career as well, or things that have just kind of stuck with you that you still kind of look back on just now?
I don't know, it's hard to think of one, to be honest with you, that really, really stands out. See, in general, I just think it was funny. I was giving a talk to my old high school yesterday, and the more I'm into the operational side of the business now as well, see, the best people, they just work the hardest. Do you know what I mean? It actually just comes down to that. No matter what you do. So I try and then put that back myself, and try and tell people that it's not going to be, everything's not going to go in that, as I say, that upward trajectory, if that's the right word, all the time. You're going to need to deal with wee setbacks. You're going to, on a daily basis. So even in my job now, on a daily basis, there'll be things that don't go right. It's just the nature of the beast. But you need to go on with it. You need to find a solution. Right, that's not working the way we want to work. Find a solution. How do we find it quickly? And learn from it and move on. And that's how, in a micro, in a daily basis that happens. But I think that's also the case in a macro basis, in a period of time, in a career, and whatever that looks like. If you want to get to the top of anything, you've got to be prepared to work hard at it, be dedicated to it, and be able to deal with setbacks and go on with it. And I think, you've got to have a level of competence as well that runs alongside that, and an ability and etc., which is fine. And that's, you try and build that up, which I've tried to do, with your education or whatever. You're trying to build your competency in your job that you're going to do. But if you don't have that work ethic and that will to drive and will to win and will to come back, as I say, for adversity, you know, you may as well stick that in the bin because you're not going to get there, you know, as far as I'm concerned. So I think my journey, you know, coming through that's why I'm so thankful for the way I get into football in a sense, because I think it's always given me a grounding and a kind of starting point that I've went through there to where I am, and it's not been plain sailing. I think that's hopefully what's, you know, is A, got me to the position that I'm in, but B, is hopefully going to then lead me to actually doing a good job and pushing on again, because that's, you know, that's what I hope to do.
Yeah. How did the move to St Mirren come about? Because obviously from a coaching point of view to then the COO is a very different career path, but for you, how did it all kind of come about? Did you plan on it? Did you see it coming?
Yes and no, really. Again, football is a mad industry. You know, you can only plan so much. You know, stuff just happens. You know, people get sacked and other people come in, and you know, ownership structures change and clubs change hands, or staffing within it changes. So it's a very fast moving, volatile kind of industry. So the key thing for that and me then, when you think about it that way, is just being ready to take another opportunity. So when I finished my pro licence, and I kind of, you know, I'd been going pretty much solid for 26 to 34, maybe took the odd kind of year out, but pretty much studying in the background. Yeah. And when I finished my pro licence, it was like, right, didn't do it for a couple of years, and I thought, right, you know, what else can I do here? Because football is, and again, this is why I'm so thankful for that start, because I think I'm so determined to stay in football, stay in sport, that almost, I think it gave me another bit of drive to really, as I say, try and upskill myself. It gives you every opportunity to stay in it. So when I got to that stage, I think it was 36, last year in my playing, I was looking around at what else can I do here, and I started a master's degree down at Manchester Metropolitan Uni and sporting directorship, and that was the trigger, I think, that really started me thinking about roles out with coaching and managing, because I said before, it was always management. I was thinking, right, I want to be a coach and I'm going to be a manager, you know, that was my that's what I'm going to be. And then for the first time then, which was when I was 37, so maybe it was really at that point I started thinking, right, what's next? You know what I mean? And then when I would get into my coaching, that's when I started doing this master's degree. So and then that just took me a different mindset, and all of a sudden I started to think, once I get into the course, which was, you know, it's been really, really good, but I think this actually suits me, you know, I think it suits my skill set, I think I could, you know, add value, and I think I could do a good job at this. So all of a sudden you start to think doing a different route and maybe different roles that could become available. So it was really through having that mindset, doing that extra bit of education, and then again just through opportunity. So the role come up, if you like, at St Mirren. And again, as these things do, through connections and through people that you know your name maybe gets put forward as a potential candidate for these things, and that was it. And I went to speak to St Mirren. Again, still a big decision for me to leave Motherwell at that point. But again, weighing it all up, and you know, having spoke to St Mirren, having spoke to Motherwell, you know, St Mirren offered me the role, and then at that point again, it goes back to that jump when I made the jump for playing into coaching, and then coaching, and you know, into this. It's like ultimately it was the opportunity again. It was the opportunity that I felt. You know, you only get so many chances to move to a Premier League club and to have this type of role, etc., etc. And while I was in no rush to leave Motherwell, and you know, Motherwell will always mean so much to me as a football club. It was just for a number of reasons, which I'll not go into all of them, but for a number of reasons, it was just the right choice at the time, and I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it, and I can see this now as my future going forward. To be honest, you know, that kind of chief executive or that more directorship role is definitely something that I can see, you know, myself working in now. Hopefully for the foreseeable.
Can I ask you? See when you interviewed for the role, and you obviously you went through the whole managerial process at Motherwell. This would have been the first kind of big interview since then. Does that stay in the back of your mind that you've been through that before, and obviously if it doesn't go to plan and you're then dealing with the aftermath of that, or was there enough time between it where you just were like, I'm not even thinking about the past, it's
Well, it helped, that experience. Again, the experience, because it's it's a unique thing to do, go for an interview, in front of, directors for a manager's job or for a, chief operating officer's job. It's, like any interview is, I suppose, but, it's something you need to prepare for properly, and I think having went through that process at Motherwell and prepared the way I did for that and going through that process, and again it goes back to that common theme of, so although that initially was a disappointing experience, there's absolutely no doubt that I took stuff from that experience and then used it to my advantage when I went and went to speak to St Mirren about this opportunity. So again, it's just that thing of learning as much as you can from those moments that maybe don't go your way. And there's no doubt in my mind the way I presented myself, the way I presented on the day, that I feel as if I took those learnings and then applied them in those conversations. So so yeah, and whatever happens with me in the future, again, hopefully use the experience I've had in this role and getting the job and etc, and then whatever's to come next for me. So I think I have learned in terms of in those environments how to best get myself across and must have worked to some extent because they offered me the job, so which I'm very, very, very thankful for.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Obviously, you've been there since last summer. I think St Mirren's highest finish since 1985 last season. Fans through the door was the highest for a long time as well. Third place this season so far.
So far.
Now, we can either put that down to Steven or you.
It's all me. It's all me.
How does it day-to-day look for you? I think a lot of people see COOs at football clubs and they're like, what does a COO actually, what do they do? What's the job? But for you, what does your kind of day-to-day look like in St Mirren?
I think it ranges a lot, as I said. You're dealing with, our structure at our club really is, we've got a board of directors and then me, essentially, overseeing the club. So I'd probably say between myself and the board, on a kind of overview level, we are setting the kind of strategic direction for the football club moving forward, really. We just launched a new club strategy about a month ago. Something that I've been working on in the background since I came to the club, and something that I think is really important for joining the club together. And that's part of my role, really, is got a lot of really important component parts, be that the academy, be that the first team, be that the women's team, be that charitable foundation, be that the general kind of operations of the club, commercial, etc. And really my job is to try and join those things together and maximise them, essentially. We're a big community football club. That's part of our vision is to be the best community football club in Scotland. And we're determined to play a part in Paisley and Renfrewshire and do what we can to help the local people, basically, and the club hopefully to be a bit of an anchor for that. All of those, that's kind of broader view. On a daily operational basis, I'm really in discussions with all of those departments pretty much on a daily basis, trying to build relationships with those departments. How do we maximise each of those component parts? And that can go from signing players for the first team to how are we adjusting our academy programme to make sure the pathway is right for our players getting through, to looking at our commercial deals, to try and speak to our commercial department to see if there's anything that we can new that we can offer to our commercial partners. So it really is really varied, and that's actually part of the role that I've really enjoyed. Because the football part of it, I suppose, comes more naturally because you've been involved in it. But the other side of the club, I've really enjoyed having an influence in the club from top to bottom, basically. It's not easy because you've not got a big staff, or you're got a big support team. I've got an excellent team, a great team. But you're not big in numbers, so your role, really, my role is really hands-on. You might have go to bigger clubs and there's different layers of staff and structure, and the CEO or CEO is maybe not quite as operationally involved as I am, but I quite like it that way, actually. And again, going back to a learning thing, I think that'll be good, hopefully, for me in the long term, that I'm actually exposed on a daily basis to actually dealing with stuff hands-on. Short answer to your question is pretty much dealing with everything, and which again is, as I said to you, is actually I enjoy that part of it.
And it's probably good as well that you've been in the kind of player and then coaching and then being part of a management team role, because you've seen the main roles that happen in a football team, and obviously you've been in the managerial setup where you've probably got frustrations at a board or a transfer budget or X, Y and Z, whereas you're now sitting on the other side of that. And Steven's on the opposite side for you, and I suppose having that relationship already there between you two must make that a wee bit easier.
Again, it goes back to that. As understanding's a huge part of it, and I think it is a help. There's no doubt about that. You know, an understanding of what the manager wants at certain times, and you know, maybe his frustrations at times, or whatever it is, and try to manage those and manage expectation, etc., etc. So that is really helpful, having that experience. And actually, what I've found is, you come back to our relationship with me and Steven, is I found that party actually is a real benefit, that I do know his character, if you like, as well as, you know, his demands, you know, in terms of football and what direction he wants to go in the sense of that. So that's been a big help in that regard. But you know, it's I'm thankful that I've had that experience, because there's no doubt when you're having, you know, conversations with, you know, from maybe from your part-time coaches in your academy all the way through the first team, and then even to the boardroom, you know, you've got a good handle on, you know, all those environments and all those conversations, and everybody's, not maybe agendas are the wrong word, but, you know, everybody's input at those different levels, and try to, as I say, I'm kind of in between it all, trying to kind of juggle it all and come to the best solution. But hopefully, as I said, my career in the past, I think, stood me in good stead to have those conversations.
Do you miss the dressing room?
You do miss. I mean, you know, playing football is just like, that's the best job in the world, right? It's like, having had the privilege of doing it, it's you know, nothing beats that. You know, I'm loving doing what I'm doing now, right? And I loved coaching and you know, whatever, but nothing beats playing. You know, just nothing whatever will beat playing and being in that dressing room, as you say, etc. I mean, I couldn't go back. I've played a couple of over 35s games, and I definitely know that I couldn't go back. And that maybe I'm satisfied to say that. I would love to go back, but I just know it's not happening, because in 5 minutes and I'd be at the game. But listen, it's just to think back to some of the times you had, and you know, privilege of playing in some of the games that you did. It's you do miss it at times.
And see, from the current role, obviously, you know, yourself, Scottish football's got 6 million opinions about 6 million different things, but from your point of view, putting your CEO head on, looking at St Mirren, what do you think are the biggest kind of challenges just now that are on the horizon, either for club or for kind of Scottish football as a whole?
I think player development's just a huge one. How do we get more young Scottish players into first teams, playing more first team football at top level, and ultimately then, you know, obviously onto the national team. And I know the national men's team's doing well at the moment, but I think there's still a long way to go in terms of you know, getting our player development strategies in the country as a whole. I just don't think there's enough young Scottish players playing enough minutes in the top division, and we need to try and change that. You know, and there's a lot of things at play there, you know, and a lot of you know, be it coaching, be it the actual pathway itself, be it the size of the league, or be it, you know, there's loads of stuff there, right? I think needs to be put into the mix. But certainly for us as a club at St Mirren, we are looking really hard at how do we get more of our young players through, because as a club we need to, you know, for us to compete, for budgets, for you know, we're a fan-owned club. That's what we know. One of our key, you know, you ask our fans, one of the key things they want to see is they want to see our own coming through at the football club. So we've got to get it right, and we've got to try and work towards that. So I think that's a huge aspect of my job, my role moving forward. And actually for the country as a whole, to be honest. Do
you think there's anything, the thing that I always get, no, I know either, but when you see players, like, I'm a Rangers fan, I look at the setup and I look at some of the younger players, and like Alex Lowry's a perfect case. I think he's 21 now, and people are like, oh, he should be ready to make a breakthrough now. And then I look down south and I see players coming in at 17, 18, playing 100, 150 games. And I'm like, why do we have they need to be 21, 22 before they can go into and I just don't know how you get around that.
No, I know, and I don't think there's just one, right, we do this and it'll be fine, right? I don't think that's the case at all. But it's that, I mean, you talk about Alex Lowry being 21. To be fair, I think each player they do develop at slightly different time. I don't think as I say, you change your setup and all of a sudden all players will be ready at 17 or all. I think each player, for different reasons, physically, mentally, they do mature at different levels, etc. But I take your point. I think that, how do we get those lads at earlier and get them into the teams and being capable of playing? Because that's the other thing. It's no good just flinging them in just for flinging them in's sake. Because you're going to your first team manager saying, well, I'm not putting them in the team if they're not good enough. So there's a bit of both there. We've got to, the opportunity's got to be there, but we've got to make sure the young players are actually ready to take that opportunity. So there is a lot of work to be done, to be honest with you, in it. I think it's something that personally, I think too much focus has been given to the kind of lower. I mean, they're taking kids into academies now at 7-8 year old. I mean, to me, that's nonsense. And there's been too much kind of focus on that and young player development, and which is still, there's, if you can do it all, great. But in terms of priorities, I think in this country we should be looking at that sort of 15, 16 to 18 age group and let the boys play with their pals. You know what I mean? And I think the focus in this country's almost went younger and younger and younger, rather than getting, let's just get that fundamental age group right, rather than worrying about whether kids are coming into academies at 8-year-old. Let's forget about that. So that's where I think the thinking and the time spent and research, etc., and what we're doing, I think has been skewed a wee bit. And I think we've took the eye off the ball exactly. What age group actually matters most, and it's that age group, that transition for under 16s, under 17s, under 18s into our first team. That's the bit we need to totally focus on for me.
And that's I suppose that age group as well. And you said it earlier. That's where the whole kind of footballing world has changed, because you've got social media, you've got so many different distractions. You see like kind of young kids at academies down south and they're getting paid silly amounts of money and they've not played a game, not played a competitive match, and it then breeds that kind of, why do I need resilience? I've got a 4-year contract, like I'm not bothered, I'm going to be a millionaire no matter what. And that probably presents its own set of, cause as much as you can guide these kids and try and teach them about resilience, and you see all these other things, you're like, it must be so hard to keep that focus when you're watching countless other things. And
it does happen in listen, I could speak here a day about all the different aspects of it, but that is an aspect of it. I think even in Scottish terms, there's some areas where boys are comfy. They're in the academy system, they're comfy, they get to that last stage, you're earning decent money, and the other thing is there's a lot of kids there as well, and so actually getting through that net becomes an issue as well. So no, that definitely is an issue. How do you retain that hunger for somebody that needs to get into a first team? We need to try and harness that and get back to that being a big driver for somebody needing to get into a first team. Because they need to go and they need to go and earn that wage. They need to go and earn that next step in their career. And I think that's something again that has definitely got to be flung into the mix when we're thinking about it.
Agreed. What about, from your kind of day-to-day role, what have you found the most kind of challenging aspect of it since coming in last year?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that you learn on the job, you know what I mean? So there's no way I'm coming into the job and I know all the answers, but you're learning quick, and I don't think there's anything that stood out to me that's really like I found, particularly hard one side of it. It's just, the bits that you don't know, you just try and, as I say, pick up as soon as you can and learn as quickly as you can, and probably, as I said, be prepared that you will make mistakes as well. And I think probably a transition from being in a sporting environment for so long and then coming in back into a kind of office environment, that has taken a wee bit of a transition, and just in terms of the workflow, and because it is a slightly different timetable if you know the way if you're working in the coaching and inside it. So you're adapting to that really, and you're adapting to a new set of people really. It's in football, and you've got a team of footballers, they're all different people, but they've all got a similar kind of job and mindset, and so you're managing a similar minded group of people. Whereas you come in this side of it now, and you're managing, totally different people. Totally different persons doing a job in reception that's doing heading up a commercial team. You know what I mean? So there's really different mindsets in what their jobs are, and different mindsets of people who they are. So it's probably that's the thing that I've had to adapt to quickest, and get to know a new group of people. What makes them tick in their roles, if you like, because there is that mix of roles and mix of people. So that's probably the thing that I would say that I've tried to pick up as quickly as I can, basically, and move forward. And
what's the hopes for the club for the next few years? Obviously, you'll be a European place this year, surely.
That would be lovely. No, not getting too carried away there. It could be nice if the season finished next week or whatever. we could do that. But the aim is, as I said, we launched a club strategy last month, and the aim of that is to be the best, community-led development club in Scotland, and that's what we're striving to do. We're striving to be the best we can be. Where that takes us, that'll take us. But it's part of my job to make sure we are absolutely maximising. Like the team are showing at the moment, is to be better than some of your parts. To foster a togetherness, a group mentality of staff, players, everybody, that we can punch above our weight and continue to punch above our weight. So I think that's where we need to be. That's what we need to work towards. And as I said, that goes from the footballing sense to building the club commercially, to the fantastic work that we're doing and plan to do in the community. And it's just really trying to continue to grow all of that. And if I can sit in 6 months' time, in a year's time, and feel satisfied that there's progress across the board in all those kind of key areas of the club, then I'll be satisfied with that. Because as we've spoke about throughout this conversation, football is not a linear process. Particularly of clubs of your size, you're going to have setbacks along the way. But if you can, along that way, if you can see that underlying growth, then we'll certainly be happy with that.
And it's obviously, you said as well, with fan-owned club, how has that side of it been with the kind of fan interaction? And there is a massive scope on community, because it is obviously you're the only team in Paisley, and you're wanting to maintain that relationship with the fans that are there. But how's that side of it been?
It's again, I was used to it coming from Motherwell, because Motherwell again another fan-owned club. So again, that was a good kind of precursor for me coming to St Mirren, because you did learn a lot about the structure and how it works between the club and the fans group, and with the Welsh Society and Motherwell. So that's really helped me actually coming into St Mirren and Smiza and the relationship there. And again, it's not without challenge, and I think any club again of St Mirren size, Motherwell size, it's being fan owned, it's not an easy process, because you've only you've got so many fans, you've got so many members and fans, etc. So there's still challenges that come along the way, but you've got the people that care most about the club, essentially, that own the club. And I think underlying principle, I think, is a good one. It's just up to me and up to the club and Smize itself and Kibble as well, or other owners, that we work together and try and, as I say, it goes back to that thing of togetherness, and making sure that we are, our structures and our, the relationships that we have in the club are as strong as they can, because, that is the only way that we will have a chance to continue to compete the way we are and grow. So, and that's part of my job, to play my role in that and try to help facilitate that. So, so that's that's the plan moving forward.
Love it. I've got to ask you, anybody that is involved in football, I asked this question when they come in. If you could change anything about Scottish football, you get the power to change anything at all, what would you change?
I've got a list, to be honest with you. VAR, do we go to VAR straight away?
You can go to VAR straight away if you want.
Right, well, that's maybe a bit...
Have you ever liked VAR?
A quick one on VAR is that I was a big advocate at the start, right? To be honest, because I just thought, more right decisions. As simple as that. I just thought more right decisions. How can that be a bad thing? I just thought it would help. I thought it would help on field referees. I've got to say my opinion, not just probably in Scotland, but in seeing VAR even down in England and elsewhere. I'm starting to sway the other way, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm just, having been in enough stadiums now that there's enough stoppages and for me, fan experience is absolutely A1 in football, and particularly Scottish football. I think the fans' passion for the game, I think that's our USP in many ways, Scottish fans and, what they bring to the game. And I just think we're slowly, having a real effect on that. I think fans are just getting pissed off, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think, it's something that we really need to think seriously about. I think it's got to improve. Yeah. Or, I think we need to have a serious conversation on whether it's worth it, because it is costing money. It's costing clubs a lot of money to have it installed and etc. So I think that's something. And to be fair, I think the SFA and the SPFL are, have a dialogue with the clubs in terms of moving forward, in terms of what we can do to try and improve it, and which I think is needed. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, I think the only other thing I would say is, having been a player, a coach, and now doing what I'm doing, is I think the competitive balance in Scotland is an issue. I think the fact that there's just no getting away from it. It's Rangers or Celtic are going to win the league for the foreseeable. And it would just be nice that if football can't always be nice and perfect, but whether it comes down to money redistribution or whatever, and it's not to hold Rangers or Celtic back in any way, but it would just be great in a way that we could get the other clubs in a place where the competitive balance in the league was a point where I can just imagine a time where even any of the other clubs, Hearts, Hibs, herself in their own position, had a real chance of then going on and challenging for those top two positions. But as it stands at the moment, it's just such a gap that it's difficult to do that, obviously. So I think in an ideal world, magic wand world, I think that's certainly something that would be great to have an effect on.
Nice. And finish on a thinking one for you. So obviously, given how you get into football, you'd a trade lined up, you were going to go and do that. You've played in Scotland, you've played in England, you've been part of a managerial setup, you moved into your current role. From when you started at age 19, if you were to sit now and look back on it, how would you describe the way things have panned out for you?
Enjoyable. Unbelievable. If you take me right back to the start of that, bit of a roller coaster at times, but just wouldn't change it for the world. Good and bad. As I said to you before, the thought I had of, if you'd asked me that first couple of weeks at Motherwell, by the way, in 25 years' time, you'll be sitting, you'll have done XYZ and you'll be sitting as St Mirren CEO. It's back to that thing, you'd have thought you were mental, But so I'm actually pretty proud of myself in that regard. I don't ever one for sitting and giving yourself a pat in the back, because there's too much always thinking about the next thing, to be honest, which is the most important thing. But when you do get that opportunity, and probably finishing playing, I had the chance to do that, and then maybe leaving coaching or leaving Mullows, another chance to do that. But in those kind of moments when you do that, I do think to myself, you're proud of yourself that you've managed to kind of navigate your way through a career in football, because as I keep saying to you, it's not all brilliant, along the way, and just having the, I never felt as if I was the best player in the world, but I absolutely maximised what I had, and I think that's the bit that I'm proud about, that you managed to navigate your way through, playing with some great players against some great players, and actually the other thing is actually staying in the game, which I think is something that's no easy to do. Given the amount of good people that have, for whatever reason, are not in the game anymore, etc. So it's very easy done. So don't take it for granted. Still working hard and still try to push myself on, but certainly proud that I'm still able to be in a sport that I absolutely love, and very proud to represent another fantastic football club in St Mirren that hopefully can have many good years ahead.
Living a dream.
Absolutely.
Thank you, mate. It's been brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.